1937 was a year shadowed by catastrophe, a time when the world dangerously stood on the brink of disaster. The Hindenburg spectacularly exploded in flames. Amelia Earhart vanished without a trace over the Pacific. The bombing of Guernica stunned the world. A devastating fire consumed the Fox film vaults, erasing irreplaceable silent cinema history forever. Simultaneously, in the late 1930s, as the world edged closer to war, Hollywood saw a wave of films that built towards climatic, large-scale calamities. San Francisco, released in 1936, recreated the city's 1906 earthquake. A year later, the hurricane unleashed a South Seas storm, while The Good Earth brought a devastating locust plague to life. These films weren't just disaster spectacles. They fused catastrophe with human drama, where love and survival became inseparable. Amid this trend, Frank Borzage crafted a film that blended romance, suspense, and tragedy, including a spectacular maritime disaster that mirrors the sinking of the Titanic in 1912 into a singular cinematic experience, a testament to Borzage's vision and the extraordinary talents of its cast. History is Made at Night marked a turning point for its stars. Jean Arthur delivered perhaps her most sophisticated and complex performance to date, solidifying her place as one of Hollywood's most coveted romantic leads. Meanwhile, Charles Boyer cemented his status as the big screen's most intoxicating lover at the time. Despite all its qualities, like many classics of its era, the film remained obscure for decades, and it wasn't until 2021 when Criterion's much-needed Blu-ray and DVD release finally restored this one-of-a-kind love story to its rightful place.
Oh.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of Criminally Underrated Classic Films, a series dedicated to discussing overlooked cinematic treasures. Today we're diving into History is Made at Night, a film with a lovely connection to our previous episode on James Whale's The Old Dark House, through the presence of Colin Clive.
It's alive! Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
What if, in an attempt to control your future, you actually set it in motion? Well, that's exactly what happens to maritime magnate Bruce Vail, portrayed by Colin Clive. In the film's story, a husband's obsession over his wife's betrayal becomes the very force that ensures it. The film is almost a textbook of self-fulfilling prophecy. Played by Jean Arthur, his estranged wife's supposed infidelity is the catalyst for a nefarious plan that begins with a staged affair.
Bruce, as a respectable attorney, I cannot condone such a cheap trick.
But this scheme not only backfires, it inadvertently leads Irene into the arms of Paul Dumont, a French head waiter who fortuitously helps her escape. And so, as the title suggests, their history begins that night, sharing thoughts and feelings as though they had never done so with anyone before. But in true Borzage fashion, the lovers must face overwhelming obstacles, from jealous husbands to towering icebergs, until destiny finally intervenes, binding their hearts against all odds. Andrew Sarris once called History is Made at Night the most romantic title in the history of cinema. In truth, the title existed before the story. Producer Walter Wanger had nothing but a name and a few pages of a script when he approached his friend, director Frank Borzage. Loving the title, he totally jumped at the opportunity. What followed was a production as unusual as the film itself.
I hate men. Don't you? Definitely.
Like Casablanca, the script was written on the fly. Notoriously peculiar writers Gene Towney and Charles Graham Baker, who were also laboring over Wanger's You Only Live Once, directed by Fritz Lang and starring Sylvia Sidney and Henry Fonda, shaped the story as filming progressed, improvising key details along the way. Then, something unexpected happened. Just as the whole cast and crew were reaching the final stretch of shooting, Wanger gained access to a model of an ocean liner. With the ending still up in the air, they seized the opportunity to finish with a bang, conceiving and including the spectacular maritime disaster climax on the spot. This last-minute addition transformed what might have been a more conventional romance into a sweeping spectacle. Borzage, along with second unit Arthur Ripley and assistant Joshua Logan, staged the film disaster sequence with extraordinary precision. Over 500 extras were immersed in artificial fog to obscure the studio walls, creating an eerie sense of chaos. Cinematographers David Abel and Greg Toland captured the sequence with remarkable depth, setting a shocking visual precedent for cinematic shipwrecks. Decades later, James Cameron's Titanic, released in 1997, would echo several of its haunting scenes, particularly mimicking the emotional impact of such catastrophe. But what truly sets History is Made at Night apart, it's not just its spectacle or genre waltzing, it's the depth of its relationships and its portrayal of love. Not only of romantic nature, friendship also plays a major part in History is Made at Night.
I'm going with you.
Now, Caesar, you're crazy. You can't give up all this for me.
And you can't give up all this for her. So we're both crazy.
At the heart of it all is the electric chemistry between Jean Arthur and Charles Boyer. There are several moments of poetic, amorous beauty throughout the film, but one that is particularly striking and emblematic of classic Hollywood innuendo is the couple's chaste yet intimate tango. In the wonderful sequence, Jean Arthur, barefoot, as though freed from the constraints of her awful marriage, moves in perfect harmony with Boyer. Their connection deepens. It becomes their signature expression of love, and it remains one of the most erotically charged moments in History is Made at Night. By mid-1930s, Jean Arthur was finally an established actress, but History is Made at Night showcased a new side of her.
I don't know what I'm doing.
In History is Made at Night, she had the chance to deliver something deeper, an understated vulnerability beneath her usual wit and terrific charm. As for Charles Boyer, the French actor of profound romantic conviction, his participation was fundamental in conveying the intensity and purity of feeling that Borzage was known for. His portrayal of Paul Dumont is a precursor to his later memorable performances in films like Algiers or, more evidently, in Love Affair.
Is there any reason why from now on it shouldn't be pink champagne?
The supporting cast of History is Made at Night is tight but vital in this unusual love story. Besides the aforementioned Leo Carrillo and Colin Clive, who would pass, sadly, only a few months after the film's release, we have a plethora of extras and uncredited appearances featuring actors like Dennis O'Keefe and Tim Holt as an SOS radio operator or editor and filmmaker Robert Parrish. All of it was possible thanks to boy wonder Walter Wanger, a promising figure of the movie business even before the sound era. A respected, college-educated independent producer, Wanger had made possible classics like John Ford's Stagecoach, Hitchcock's Foreign Correspondent, or Fritz Lang's Scarlet Street, featuring his then wife Joan Bennett in a career-defining role.
That's interesting.
What's even more interesting is how themes from Scarlet Street and History is Made at Night, particularly jealousy, possession, and the constraints placed on women, played out in real life between Wanger and Bennett in truly unexpected ways. In 1951, convinced that Bennett was having an affair with her agent Jennings Lang and reeling from the financial disaster of his 1948 epic Joan of Arc, starring Ingrid Bergman, Wanger confronted Lang in a parking lot and shot him in the groin. The scandal shook Hollywood and effectively derailed Bennett's career, echoing the film's unsettling themes in ways that feel ironically similar. But unlike the film's obsessive tycoon, Wanger didn't meet a tragic end. Lang survived and Wanger served a brief prison sentence before returning to producing mainly B-movies for a while. Though his career experienced both highs and lows, Wanger's ambitions ultimately collapsed with the catastrophic production of Cleopatra, released in 1963, one of Hollywood's most infamous financial failures and his final film. Frank Borzage, on his part, remained in steadfast progression, particularly through the 1920s and 30s, and by 1937 he was an established and celebrated filmmaker. He had first forged his path as an actor before transitioning behind the camera. He won 2 Academy Awards early in his career, one for Seventh Heaven, released in 1927, the very first Oscar ever awarded for directing, and another for Bad Girl in 1931. But for all that acclaim, he has remained an elusive figure in film history, and while he has largely been labeled as a director of love stories, his films offer a more layered depiction. The context in which they unfolded was equally important, blending lyricism and realism in a unique way. History is Made at Night is a perfect example of this, a film where fate, chance, and passion collide in a world ruled by chaos. Borzage, much like Clarence Brown, was one of classic Hollywood's great masters of romance, a filmmaker who saw love not only as a sentiment but as a radical force, a defiant philosophy against destruction and human crisis. Beneath the tenderness and seemingly conventional portrayals of love in his films lies a keen awareness of his era's looming threats, not only in the outside world but also within the film industry.
Sometimes murder's like love. It takes 2 to commit it. The man who hates and the man who's hated.
Superb films like Three Comrades, Little Man What Now, The Mortal Storm, or Moonrise might exemplify this even further, yet History is Made at Night remains no lesser a representative. Among Borzage's impressive filmography, this film stands, despite the mixing of genres, as a reminder of the power of vision and the superb skills of this masterful director. There's something magical about this film. It might not be for everyone, but for those of us who deeply appreciate it, History is Made at Night is one of the many reasons why discovering love in the movies, especially in this Borzagian way, remains so powerful and beautiful.
Beautiful. Keep her warm.
Keep her warm.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you soon with another video, and as always, keep watching classic movies.